Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty wild and fascinating concept from our source material, this idea of horizontal time. It's a journey that goes way beyond the simple ticking of a clock. All right, so to get our heads around this, the source doesn't just start with a dry theory. No, it kicks things off with a few really bizarre events that just don't seem to make sense in our normal world.
So picture this. You've got a totally normal passenger plane flying its route. Air traffic control is tracking it, everything's fine, and then poof, it's just gone, vanishes from every single radar screen.
But then, just a few minutes later, it just pops right back up on the radar. It's in the same spot, just continuing on its way like absolutely nothing happened. Weird, right? Well, this is where it gets really strange. The plane lands safely, but when the crew and all the passengers check their watches, they're all exactly 8 minutes behind the airport's time. A chunk of time just disappeared for them. So the source uses this story, and a bunch of others, like this old tale of a woodcutter who gets lost watching a game of chess and suddenly finds out decades have passed, or even the captain of the Titanic supposedly being found years later not having aged a day, to ask a really big question. Is the way we experience time the only way? To even begin to answer that, the source proposes a whole new way to think about time. It suggests that we're actually dealing with two different kinds of time. So first up, you've got vertical time. And this is pretty much time as we all know it, right? The clock on your wall, the calendar. It just marches forward in one direction. Past, present, future. It's linear, it's predictable, and you can't stop it. But then there's horizontal time. And this isn't about moving forward at all. It's all about preservation. It's described as the state where a single moment can be, captured and held in a sort of eternal present, completely disconnected from the flow of past and future. So that's the big difference, you know? Think of vertical time as a river, always flowing, always moving on. Horizontal time, on the other hand, is like taking a single drop of water out of that river and freezing it solid in a perfect block of ice. It's still, it's preserved, and it's totally outside of that main current. Now, this is where it gets really cool. The source tries to connect this big, abstract idea to the physical world, to physics, really. It tries to link the flow of time to the actual state of matter itself. It all boils down to this one core principle. The idea is that time isn't some universal constant, just ticking away at the same speed for everything and everyone. Nope. Instead, how fast time moves is directly tied to the physical processes, the motion of matter, happening inside an object. And there's this brilliant, simple analogy to explain this. Just imagine you've got two identical peaches. You leave one out on the kitchen counter, you know what happens? The natural process of decay, that motion of matter kicks in, and it gets all rotten. But the other one, you pop it in the fridge, which slows all those processes way, way down. So, in the language of this theory, that refrigerated peach has basically slipped into a little bubble of horizontal time. Its state of perfect ripeness has been preserved because it's shielded from that relentless forward march of vertical time that made the other peach rot. And this is where the source circles back to those wild stories from the beginning. The woodcutter, the airline passengers, the ship captain, they were all just like that peach in the fridge. For a little while, their biological processes were put on pause, preserving them perfectly outside the normal flow of time. Okay, so stick with me here, because this is where the source takes this physical idea and makes a huge leap, a quantum leap, you could say. It connects it all to parallel worlds and the power of our own minds. This is a really interesting twist. The source takes the idea of parallel universes from quantum mechanics and kind of rebrands it. It suggests that these other worlds aren't totally separate physical realities. Instead, they're different domains of horizontal time, each one sort of vibrating at its own unique speed. You know that old saying, 1 year in heaven, 1,000 years on earth? The source points to stuff like that as a kind of ancient wisdom, hinting that people have always had this feeling that different planes of existence could experience time in completely different ways. But here's the most mind-bending part. The source says you don't need some sci-fi wormhole or a special spaceship to get to these places. The vehicle for travel is something every single one of us already has, our own consciousness. So, if our mind is the key, how do we actually use it to open the door? Well, the source doesn't just leave this as a cool theory, it actually lays out a kind of practical guide for how to do it. So, the technique is basically a form of deep, focused visualization. You consciously decide to step out of the now, and you just immerse your mind in a really vivid, beautiful scene. A quiet beach, a magical forest, whatever place you can imagine that feels perfect and serene. And according to the text, the benefits of doing this regularly are, well, they're huge. The source claims that by putting your consciousness into this preserved horizontal state, you can actually improve your physical health, maybe even slow down aging, and find more happiness. It goes even further, saying it can change the antimatter structure of your life and let you connect with celestial beings. So, what this is really saying is that daydreaming, or just taking a moment to vividly imagine something positive, isn't just fluff. According to this theory, it's the actual act of putting yourself in that refrigerated, preserved state. You're giving your mind and body a break from the stress and decay of normal, everyday vertical time. And it all kind of comes down to this really powerful thought that maybe the rules of our reality are a lot more flexible than we think. That maybe they're limited not by physics, but by what we're willing to believe is possible. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. We all kind of know that our mindset can affect our health and our mood, but this theory pushes that so much further. And it asks us to wonder, what is the real, untapped power of our own consciousness to shape not just how we feel about time, but to shape reality itself?